Okay, with a show of hands, how many of us grew up in Kaduna? So we have family here. Okay. Next slide. I spent a lot of time in the Sani Abacha Memorial Children's Hospital because I grew up as an asthmatic patient, very chronic asthmatic patient. And that is why I didn't join the army eventually, because I wanted to go to Nigerian military school. And I spent 6 years in this hospital, five days intervals. I had crisis, they'll take me back. I had crisis, they'll take me back into the hospital. I graduated into the adult hospital, Barodico Specialist Hospital. Here was more tense for me. The atmosphere was something that I couldn't imagine as a child in that place, because in this space, we had places where you put children with respiratory illnesses in a place. People with asthma, people with pneumonia were in a certain ward. Next slide. So I got into this ward. There was a problem. I was the youngest person in this ward. I was 11 years old at the time. And every other person there was older than I was. My caregiver was my mom, and she was always by my side in the hospital. Crisis upon crisis. Then there was this nurse that came about and said, look, one of your allergies in this space is because we mix Izal and Dettol together on the floor. That is why you're always coming back to this hospital space. So I think we need to move you from this ward and take you to another ward. So they transferred me to the other ward. It was worse. I was now put with people that were older than me that had issues like Alzheimer's disease. These people were, I became a landlord, so everybody knew me in the hospital. So anywhere they put Amos would stay, because he knows. It became so bad that every patient, I knew your problem, I knew your discharge date, I knew everything about you. I knew when the nurse was supposed to give you this medication. I'll tell you that, please, uncle, they're supposed to give you aminophylline by 3 p.m. That's the kind of patient I was in this hospital. Then one day, a special patient came, an elderly man of over 70 years old, and he was supposed to have a surgery for hernia. And we got talking. We're friends, and we got talking. And one of those days, one of his children came in at 5 and said he had high blood pressure for 4 days. High blood pressure, recurring for 4 days. So one of his children came and said, Daddy, we need to take you outside so that your blood pressure will come down, because we need to do this operation. And they wheeled him outside for about an hour or so. When they brought him back in, he looked different. It was the first time I was in the hospital for 6 days, and it was the first time they were taking Baba out and bringing him inside. And he looks very different. And I saw the glow in his face. That was what informed my impression to study landscape architecture. So my mom now took a cue from that, and we now began to spend more time outside. I spent 2 hours outside. I was wheezing. She took me outside. In less than 30 minutes, I normalized without using an inhaler, without using any dilator at all. I normalized. We got back into the hospital. I usually have these asthma attacks at night. Rainy season was a problem. Dry season was a problem. It was just a problem for me. So we got back into the hospital at night, and I was wheezing. And I was supposed to use an aminophylline injection. And my mom now says, Amos, let's go outside. And I walked outside. The Barodico Specialist Hospital just has mango trees. That's the kind of trees that they had. And I walked outside. And in less than 10 minutes, I stopped wheezing again. So there was a problem with the hospital space as against the outdoors. The next day, my mom said, we're packing our things, we are going. These people have chopped our money too much. Let us go. So they discharged me, and I left. Anytime I had this asthma attack, and I walked outside. So I decided, what is this problem with nature and asthma? What is going on? Next slide. So I ended up becoming a landscape architect. And what do landscape architects do? Landscape architects are concerned about designing the outdoor spaces. It's a science and art of designing outdoor spaces using nature. Now, my topic had to do with nature, but I had to limit it to landscape because nature is wide. Nature has to do with mountains, has to do with water bodies, has to do with plants, and including the sun. So we're going to talk about landscape. So as a designer, as a scientist, and an environmentalist, I've decided to go outdoors because I have a first-hand experience of how this outdoors affects mental health. Now, mental health, the perception of mental health that people have is somebody that is mad. So I asked this question, okay, mental health, how many people? When you say mental health, what does mental health mean? A lot of people said the person must be mad. And if you go to Google, interestingly, you Google mental health, black man, this is the image you see. This is the only image you see online of a mad person. In fact, if you use mad on Google, you have an emotion, somebody that is upset. So this is the general perception of mental health. But I found out that mental health involves many, many more things. Suicide is an offshoot of mental health. Okay? We also have dementia, is also an offshoot of mental health. Anxiety, depression are all offsets of mental health. Now, the relationship between mental health and landscape didn't just start today. This issue of mental health has been a problem since the 17th century, and everybody seemed to look for a place to find solace. Where can we stay and enjoy nature? What kind of ambience do we need? So kings in those days that had castles, they decided, okay, look, let's have gardens where if the king is upset, instead of having a jester come and tell him a joke, let him have a space that he can walk through, which is what we have missed out in our situation in Nigeria. When we talk about gardens, when we talk about landscape, a lot of people don't know that landscape is meant to be enjoyed. You walk through it and enjoy the scents, enjoy touch, enjoy. In fact, landscape architecture is the only profession that uses 3D and the fourth dimension, which is time. Length, breadth, depth, and time. Because everything we do is time-bound. You plant a tree today, you don't know what, you can't imagine what it becomes until 5, 6, 10 years later before it evolves. The Millennium Park, Jabi Park, all of these parks were established with this in mind, but there was a problem in the city. When these parks came up, because the Obasanjo regime thought it fit that, okay, look, we need parks where people can come together and ease tension. There was a lot of stress in the FCT. So they came up with the idea, okay, let's have these parks. So Millennium Park came up with Jardine as the contractors and Parks and Recreation as the supervisors of this project. But there was a problem. The problem was criminals began to use these places as dens for different kind of things. So the park idea didn't sail through during that time. So there was a need for better lighting, a need for security in these spaces. So Millennium Park rebranded. When the Millennium Park rebranded, there was more security, there was more lighting. FCT, Parks and Recreation Department, now discovered that, look, there was a lot of inflow of people coming into Parks and Recreation. Now there was into the Millennium Park. And there was no segregation. You had poor people, you had rich people coming into these spaces. And all of them were just sitting down to enjoy nature. Then there was a need for more parks in the FCT. They now began to earmark green areas for recreation in neighborhoods. So you don't have to leave Lugbe and come to Millennium Park to enjoy nature. So they now began to have pockets of green areas. But there was a problem. The problem was these green areas now became a place for alcohol and chilling. So the Society of Landscape Architects decided we needed to carry out a study on this park designs, why people use parks. And funny enough, in the year 2013 and 2014, we carried out questionnaires to about 13 parks in the FCT. And we found out that everybody that wanted to go to these gardens had one form of problem or the other: stress, fatigue, and they wanted to be under trees. So we now did a correlation between nightclubs and parks. Who carries more traffic? So we did that, and we took 10 top clubs in the FCT, and we took 10 gardens in the FCT, and we used the hours of 5 to 10 o'clock. And the traffic we had most was in the gardens, informal setting. Next slide. Now, the relationship between mental health and landscape. When people now began to, patronize these gardens, there was need for informal food, informal activities. People wanted to now live like they were in the countryside, they were in the village. So there was no need for shawarmas, there was no need for ice cream. People wanted natural things. And so fish now came in. Fish wasn't one of the things when parks started in the FCT. Fish started coming up, meat started coming up, and anything local, pepper soup, you name it. It now became like elite people in the city want to come out into the countryside to relax and ease pressure, ease tension, ease whatever. Next slide. Okay. As a town planner, I have to mention this. Urbanization has taken up most of the city. Construction. Our major enemies are the architects on this one. They've taken up our spaces, they've built up everywhere, and the ground is so hard. Hard in the sense that you have a building and the whole environment is interlocked. Hard in the sense that when you walk into a site, you walk into a space, and the ground is reflecting so much light, coal tar, or from concrete. Issues from urbanization. From this chart, you can see that 49.3 million people have moved to urban areas, which is not supposed to be, because they were in the rural areas, they're the ones enjoying the trees and all of this. Now they've come into town, and there's so much stress on infrastructure in the city. You have architects laying polythene bags under interlock. They tell you because they don't want grasses to prick out of the interlocks. Now, that is a problem to the landscape. How is it a problem? When you block the ground, you channel the underground water to the next sites around you. If you notice closely, anytime you do that, the next site perimeter around your building, you see that they have water issues, percolation, soaking their walls. People say Abuja land, all of that. You have that issue. But have you ever wondered, on your rooftop, you see grass is growing on them. Did anybody plant those grasses on it? It's the same effect this interlock has on the ground. Grass must grow. So you have what they call pollination, where from wind, you see grasses, you can pick out. So this ecological problem has caused a lot of issues in the FCT. People securing their own land, they don't want grasses to prick. Adjoining houses are having issues from this landscape anomaly, which isn't supposed to be so. Next slide. Now, our children are in serious need of outdoor spaces. They spend a lot of time indoors. They come back from school, they're in the house, playing computer games, They have nothing to do with the outdoors. And this is affecting them mentally. Because in the outdoors, you interact, you have emotional interaction with people of different strata in the environment. But they are indoors. Indoors. You find out that when these children go out, I'm a researcher, so we do a lot of statistical analysis. I didn't want to bore you with numbers. But it's gotten to a point where children that stay indoors and the children that stay outdoors in the city, their skin is different. They are not hardy enough. They are prone to injuries. Children that stay indoors, they are prone to injuries. All the ultraviolet lights and all of those things that they've missed in the outdoors, now becomes a mental issue when they now go into secondary schools, into boarding houses, from this simple thing as let your children play outside. We have a problem in the development control, and that is what we are still trying to discuss. In development control, we passed a paper that every building, apart from having a green area, should have a place for children to play. Most of the estates designed in the FCT today, probably because they don't carry landscape architects with them, but there's no place for children to play, interaction. Many of us grew up in Zaria. Even in those spaces, we had pockets of spaces where children can play and interact. Our estates are free from places where children will play, places from where children will interact, and our schools also have this problem. Like I said, I grew up in Kaduna. In Kaduna, we had playgrounds. Every school had a playground. In the FCT, we have a deficit of that. 16 to 11. Now, everybody, with the occurrence of the climate change education about the ecosystem, about depleting of the ozone layer, everybody is now a pseudo landscape architect. Everybody is planting. Are they planting the right way, or they are planting the wrong way? If you go through the city of Abuja, every plant still standing was planted by Jardine, which is the foremost landscape construction company in the FCT. The ones that we have decided to do, state governments have decided, okay, let's plant trees. But we don't know the importance of these trees, what trees should be planted where, and you can see Maitama having tree roots coming out of concrete pavings from the ground. Ficus benjamina is not a roadside tree. So we have this issue. If you go through Gariki, you have what we call Melina arborea, which is this species of tree outside here. Also, it is not a windbreaker of any kind. Planted in the city. Why? Somebody just felt we need to begin to plant. And nurseries began to sprout. Everywhere you have a nursery. But these nursery owners have no knowledge of what plants should be planted where. I walked into this space and I saw this beautiful Anglonema purifies the air. This is a version of agave also. Purifies the air. People are now deciding to bring the outdoor indoors. This, from research, says that 20% of air in any space of 60 square meter radius, it purifies the air. I have a slide. I think I need to go. Okay, now. Let's talk about it. Go back. This is one of the issues we have in our landscape in the FCT. This AstroTurf synthetic grass came as a result of people didn't want nature in their spaces. Let us save time. There's no need to weed. There's no need to mow. Let us begin to plant these things in large spaces. Schools now began to use this for playgrounds. Recreational areas began to use this for playgrounds. But there was a problem. This grass, AstroTurf, was developed for the UK, was developed for Iceland, was developed for Poland, not for the temperate regions. So you have people planting this on, say, a square meter of this room, on concrete. Flipping over this, you can see that all of this is rubber. So we did the research, we studied, and found out that all of that material under this thermoplastic, AstroTurf, is from benzene and from tire. 200 goalkeepers in the UK were affected from cancer from this AstroTurf. Google, it's online. What happened? These things expire. Designers in the room, usually when you lay this, you keep it and think it's perpetual. They have a lifespan, 3 years, 4 years. You have to get the manufacturer detail from the main row. So when these things begin to disintegrate, they enter into fingernails. In fact, the children that now had this lipoma cancer, that's the name, lipoma cancer, from these black things, because when you take their bath, all of these fingernails is missing. They go back home, they ingest stuff, and they begin to develop issues. Loss of appetite, tapeworm issues, all from benzene, because benzene is an allotrope of carbon. So you might ask, so how come we are still using it in the country? There is the AstroTurf for the temperate, and there's the AstroTurf. Yes. So when you walk into the market and somebody tells you, this grass is 10,000 naira, it's different. Please always flip over. Your rugs in the house have this thermoplastic underneath. It has to look like that. Not like this. Like this, if you're going to use this. In fact, the whole idea of using this kind of AstroTurf is to use it in interior spaces where there's no disintegration, where termites are not going to eat it, where rain is not going to affect it. In design, another thing, again, this thing causes is eyesight issues for children. Because this thermal surface, does not absorb light. If you see anywhere they lay it in children's playgrounds, the reflection is harsh. And you expose children to these kind of things in design. These are some of the things landscape architects have come out to say, look, we're doing these things wrong. We need to come back to the drawing board to educate people on what AstroTurf is meant for. It was meant for football pitches. These football pitches, they roll it after the match. Turn the next slide. This woman's daughter, Amy Griffin, she's the one that ran this research. Her daughter died from the usage of AstroTurf. In the UK, they play a lot of football, so AstroTurf is one of their main features. So it's cancerous. Lipoma, is it? You can see the constituents. It has mercury, arsenic, and all of that, like I've mentioned. But why I'm raising this today is because asbestos, like architects know, have been our roofing material for a very, very long time. Until one day somebody just came up and said, look, this cancer issue, we've been harvesting water from asbestos roofs and we've been drinking this water. And some people were having cancerous diseases. It took 35 years to find this out. We shouldn't wait 35 years to find out that AstroTurf is a problem in our landscape. It's not like it is a bad thing, but we should know where we put them because they do not absorb water. They are non-biodegradable in the sense that after about 2 or 3 years, termites begin to eat them up, and the soil cannot even disintegrate them. Next slide. Benefits of a healthy landscape to man. I had a problem with this because everybody knows that landscaping has a lot to do with trees. Tree cover, tree takes up, tree gives us oxygen and all of that. But what is the importance of this landscape to human environment? So the best explanation I can give is walking into this enterprise building and you see the trees. The microclimates at that space is different from where you are coming from. It eases whatever stress you are coming here with. Traffic stress, whatever kind of stress, you just walk in, the climate just eases the way you feel, eases your stress. Now, I am not a scientist to properly explain emotions to you, but I just find out that a lot of times when you have landscapes is where couples like to picnic, couples like to make proposals, you have a lot of coupling in this kind of spaces. So landscape has shown that it fosters relationships, it fosters development amongst family units. You walk into the Millennium Park, you see family units. It just has a way of bringing people together. The issue of fighting pollutants and encouraging city dwellers to spend time outside, which is what I explained earlier about how parks came into being and people wanting to spend more time in outdoor spaces. Benefits of healthy landscape to the environment. Natural coolants. Now, I would want to explain this in a technical way that we all need to understand. Not every tree gives out a lot of oxygen. Not every tree. And that is why the umbrella tree, which is the satellite tree, Terminalia catapa, which is the one that spreads, actually gives a lot of oxygen. A lot. Anywhere you have it, be sure of a normal supply of oxygen. And so I'll still go on. So in plant selection, we have to know what to plant, where to plant. You just don't walk into the nursery and tell the nurseryman, this is what I want, this is what I want, this is what I want. You need to study and know what it is. There's another species of this plant, which we call dumpkin, mother-in-law tongue, if you know it. A lot of us have it indoors. Beautiful, but it's poisonous. It's poisonous. We've not asked these questions. If you have a pet, mother-in-law tongue, that's the local. If you go into a nursery, local nursery, tell them mother-in-law tongue. Yes, dumpkin is the name. It's another species of this. I have a picture of it. Poisonous to touch and even to rub your skin against. It kills cats, it kills dogs, the evidences of all of that. So the education of the landscape is very, very key and very important to us. There have been issues of building collapses. There's a landscape perspective to these building collapses also. There are some trees we have planted that have taken their fibrous roots to the foundation of buildings and have caused structural defects on the foundation. Many, many years later, these buildings collapse. Nobody has investigated how that tree that was 5 meters away affected the structure. It's a study that we're also carrying out now with this building collapse issue, because some of these buildings, like in Lagos, for example, when we visited the site of the collapsed building in Ijesha, we found out that beyond the structural strength of the building had no windbreaker around it. Now, a lot of people just think the masquerade tree we plant in the cities have no function. Sometimes they avert the building from direct wind force. As environmental cleaners, this is a very interesting problem we have in the country today. CO is killing a lot of people. Carbon monoxide. People are dying, they go into their rooms. Death. Families of 5, family of 6, family of 10 dying. But the statistics has more of these people dying in the south, not in the north. And what that explains is vegetation cover. In as much as the north is suffering from desertification issues, there seems to be more cover in urban areas, vegetation cover in urban areas, than in the south that has a lot of forests. Now, we carried out a study also. How can you just sleep overnight and just pass on in the morning? Won't somebody wake up and just begin to cough? I mean, does CO2 just paralyze you? Just like that, the whole family would just, nobody would wake somebody up and say, look, what is going on? And that. So we did an investigation with the University of Abuja, and we decided to ask families what was going on with these generating sets. What is the issue? We found out that some of them placed their generating sets in corridors, some of them placed it 3 meters. The manufacturer instruction on any generating set is 5 meters from the building. So we now decided to do some research and see how can we help these people, because some of them are in rented apartments. They didn't design the houses. So what do? So we decided to test which plants would absorb CO from the atmosphere. Look at the kind of smoke we get. Statistics say 600,000 deaths in Africa alone. In Nigeria, in the last 5 years, 352 people have died on record from generating fumes. So we now decided, this study took us 3 years to come about, and we had to look for a species. Yucca, if you go to a local nursery, yucca is the name of this species. This species actually absorbs 60% of CO in the atmosphere. This is our challenge. Now we did this study. This is actually my study with a petrol generator and a diesel generator at different times to see how much poisonous gas yucca can take out on the atmosphere. We did that. With diesel, it takes as much as 60% of the atmosphere. But we now have a challenge. In places where you don't have space, like there's a curb here, we planted this. Are you going to put a potted plant by the generating sets to reduce the effects of combustion in these spaces? The study we're also working on. Now, for this generator effect and landscape, I would want to advise us as users of generators to always, as a matter of importance, to use species like yucca, dracaena, even the mother-in-law tongue in these kind of places. And for architects, instead of having barricade of metal fenestrations, now we can also have walls of bougainvillea species, creeping plant species. Apart from the aesthetic, it also reduces this effect of CO. I didn't know this until we started this research, that it takes a while for CO to really kill a man. It takes a while. So you can have a generating set like this in your house, and it just takes a year or two for that CO to enter into your bloodstream, cripple your hemoglobin, and you are gone. So this is a new research we're trying to propagate for these areas. Like I said, this generator thing happens mostly in the south. No vegetation cover in urban areas. In the north, we have more of this in urban areas. Now, I got a commission to design a park at local Goma Junction. And the client wanted a landscape architect to design the park. So they looked for a landscape architect. I was fortunate enough, they got me. I met the site at this stage in 2015 when I got the commission. And so I decided I don't like to disturb nature. That's one of the things I don't do. If you bring me into your site and says, we look for what we can keep, we don't have to take out all the trees. But you can imagine in 2009, for a place that was designated as a park by the FCT, look at how many trees it had, which would have been a natural park with minimal disturbance. But this is what I met in 2015. So I got the commission, and I designed around the trees. And the client now said, please, I need more space because I want to make money. Trees, I don't want trees. We can buy trees and put them later, they will grow. And like we know, the fastest growing tree is the masquerade tree. 2-3 years, it's gone. The other trees like cashew, all of those trees take 3 years, 5 years, you know. And she said, you need to take out all these trees. I want to be able to see my site. So we had to disturb the landscape. I tried. I saved as much as I could. We ended up, after she saw these trees, the size and the thermal comfort it was giving, because even in the evenings, people didn't want the open spaces to sit down under. They wanted to sit down under the trees. She now said, yeah, landscape architect, come. What do? We had to go to Benin, into the forest, to begin to remove trees that were 1.5 meters, 1.8 meters tall. It cost us 25,000 naira per piece. You have to transport them in the night so that you can plant them in the morning. What you would have saved. The next slide. This is what the park looks like today. In fact, it's the first park that has a lot of these therapeutic things we've talked about. A client that listens. So we have aromatic plants and all of those plants here in this park. Now, how many of us know what this is? The dinosaur. What species of dinosaur is it? Yep, it's a Tyrannosaurus. But how many of us really met this creature on this planet? But we know so much. We know so much about it. The next slide. This butterfly is missing in our ecosystem. Many of our children today have never seen a butterfly in our system. So I want to encourage us as designers of the environment to inculcate gardens, greens, where you have hard concrete, hard surfaces, break them up. Let us have green so that we can have a more effective ecosystem. Thank you.